You are here?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Can anybody see the slides? Or...
Yeah, I can see them.
Okay.
Maybe if you just talk, yeah. And
if you can help me with the
Yeah, I'll do it. Don't worry.
You'll be my assistant. So yeah, as you can see in the slide, that's this approach is called brain connected with the soil and with fertility, and that's so. As I was saying before, you start from the ground up. You start building soil and building diversity, and then you start with your first production, and little by little you become a resilient system. Can you go to the next slide? Okay. And just to finish this general part about it, sorry it took so long, it was supposed to be shorter. Enterprises, to be in nowadays scenery, they must be profitable and self-sufficient, but they also have to service other enterprises. They have to form what we call guilds, so like associations of various enterprises. And then they have to be mindful of the ecological landscape, the community, and the markets, and also your personal aspiration. Can you go to the next slide? Okay. As everybody should know, nowadays, bare soil is the public enemy #1. So this system is designed not to cover the soil the most every time, even in horticulture system. Can you go to the next one? Okay. So, but normally, what do we have in our system? Is we start to plow, then we disc. We plow the fields in fall, then we disc them in spring, then we cultivate it in summer, and then we till them. And that's the equivalent of taking our buildings, destroying them, putting in a dump, and then rebuild them again. It's really a silly thing to do, but it's what we're used to, and we think it's normal. Can you go to the next one? So this is what another type of landscape could look like. From the cities, green cities with various horticultural system within the city, we can go to the suburbs and transform them to a new green belt. Then the town side would be the ideal place for market garden, and the countryside for field scale market garden with a broader extension. While as we approach to the wild country, we can do sustainable forestry and integrated forest garden production. And then we can leave a lot of space for wilderness, for inspiration, research, and genetic diversity. This could look like a fairy tale land, but in effect, a lot of this is happening all over the world. So it's just a matter of quantity, not of quality, because we have all the tools available for doing this. Next slide, thanks. So the farm design cycle starts for understanding ecosystem services. Then you map and assess all your farm. Then you do a budget, and you start. Can you lift it up a bit? Yeah. Thank you. No, the other way. So then you do design management, and you use a system of permanent beds for production. That's and this turns in the end in a pattern agri-system. Let's go over and you see what I'm talking about. Understanding ecosystem services, for example, means understanding how the water cycle in your farm works. As you can see, when it rains, it could go in a well-designed farm. All the water could be used for various uses, like natural ponds, or we can manage the overland flow to go to farm structure that harvests water, and then with this water, we can use it for irrigation. Water is my main field of operation, and I can assure you that with even a little drop of water, we can do plenty of stuff. So it's we are far from utilizing water at its best, and that's a great news because water scarcity will be more and more frequent in the future. Let's go on. That's another slide about the water cycle. Well, we can go on faster on this one. And the other important ecosystem service that we have to take care of, the one is water cycle, the other one is the soil management. As you can see, pedogenesis, which is the genesis of soil, it's a process that takes a long time and it's very delicate. But you can see from the weathering of bedrocks, you develop more and more complexity, what pedologists call horizons, and your soil little by little becomes really complex with a superficial horizon with fertility, and then other horizons which accumulate a lot of minerals. And in the end, if you have a permanent bed system, like the permabed system, this fertility will stay there forever. Of course, you must be aware of this on your farm. For example, if you can slide it just a bit down, the slide, you can see that even in a small farm, you can have different types of soil, and you have to be aware of that. You could have a sandy loam, and just a few meters apart, you can have a zone with clay, with a different drainage. So that's really, we have to start to design our farms knowing how specific is our site and how different is the type of soil. Yep, you can go on a bit, the next slide. And you can see how complex is this soil cycle. Especially, we are used to take fertility from chemical compounds, artificial compounds, which are very energy intensive in their production. And even in organic farming, we pay a lot of attention on organic substance, but very little attention to the mineral quality of our land. And this, for a CSA, would be, for example, a great point of leverage. More and more, we're talking about nutrients-dense food, which is food which is not only pleasant to eat, but also rich in mineral and micronutrients. And this could be achieved by adding, rock dust or using plant succession that mine the minerals from the soil and give it to the plants that they need. But that's really a crucial factor if you want to distinguish CSA product from the average product that you find in a supermarket. Maybe we, as CSA, we can produce less, but with better quality. Let's go on. And another important cycle for agriculture is the nitrogen cycle. And this is very delicate. Normally, a lot of nitrogen is lost in the atmosphere. So we have to make use of, as you probably may know, of a lot of legumes, and which are in symbiosis with some bacteria that take nitrogen from the air. Air is a very powerful sink of nitrogen, but most of it is unuseful to life. But in some cases, we can drain it from the air and bring it down to the soil. Next slide. I want to go faster on this. This is general agronomic knowledge, but as you can see, in a permanent bed system, you can preserve all the. If you can lift up the slide a little bit, what's the magic starts underneath our vegetables, and we aren't aware of. It's mycorrhizal fungi, which are a type of fungi that are in symbiosis with our roots, bacteria, nematodes, which are not bad at all normally. And so this soil food web, which is getting investigated more and more, it's really surprises. It's the core of our system, and it's the part of the system that we shouldn't destroy. So let's go on, the next slide. And finally, the third aspect of the ecosystem service that we have to preserve is the ecosystem dynamic, the species dynamic. Even if we don't notice it in our fields, in our agricultural field, there are all the roles that are present in wild nature. There are predators, there are herbivores, there are autotrophs, which are the plants, and omnivores like us humans. And all this, they should interact to make an healthy ecosystem. Most pest attack that we experiment in the field are a lack of predators of our pests. So that's why we have to restore biodiversity and special places for the ecology to be restored. Let's go on. And as you can see, the organisms can be linked together by mutualism, which is the relationship where every one of the two parts benefits in the same amount. Commensalism, which could be, for example, a vine climbing on a tree, which is not harming normally the tree, and so the fact that one eats doesn't harm the other. But there are also relationships of parasitism, which should be avoided normally, but they are also a part of the general ecosystem. So let's go on. And as you can see, in a permanent bed system, we can partition our space to allow all this connection to take place, and that's the strength of a permanent bed system. Yeah, can you go now? So in the end, ecosystem service, if we combine nature with our capacity to organize and give beauty to our system, you can see that are plentiful. There's beauty, organization, resource diversity, and that's in charge of the man. But there's also nutrient cycling, soil improving, weed suppression. So we are in charge of the community dynamic of our field, and so we can allow some weeds to be present, but we also must be aware that weeds should be controlled. And we should control, most of all, erosion, soil erosion, and preserve water perfectly. And all this is possible with a permanent bed system. Another important aspect is windbreaks. That's why in the system that I show you afterwards, annual species with an annual cycle, which generally are little species, are mixed with permanent species like trees and bushes. And one of the functions that they have is to work as a windbreak. Yep, you can go on. Thank you. So, what does using ecosystem service mean? It means guiding natural flows and instead of blocking them, establishing windbreak. So very practical stuff that we do. We should really improve our system. But now our monocultural fields have destroyed all the hedges and the windbreaks that used to be a part of the agricultural landscape. We should avoid the use of the toxic substances, and we, as in their file, but in many approaches in agriculture, we ban totally toxic substances. And as I said before, maintain the soil cover as much as possible, integrate annual and perennial. There should be a continuity of flowering plants if we want to be productive all the year long. And we have to analyze our ecosystem and reintroduce the missing pieces of our system. And most of all, this is common sense, work the land when it's in the right condition. Plowing or working in every way the land when it's too moist or too dry will result in a disaster that it's really hard to recover. We can go on. And so these are our main assets in the system. We integrate and layer diversity, we reduce tillage and conserve the soil, and we give cover crop priority. So in this system, the main way of bringing fertility back to the system is through cover crop. If you don't know what cover crops are basically culture that we use not for direct production, not for eating or for forage for animals, but to restore fertility. There are short cycle plants that you need for that. You can go on, thanks. And so to follow this approach of permanent bed system, you start with a very intensive mapping of your farm, of all the features. You can go on, thank you. Adelaide, yeah. And you have to be aware that mapping your farm means taking into account all the layers of the important factor of your farm: the climate, the microfauna, the geology, the microfauna, topography, society, all this stuff combined together. Then when you map everything, you can put it in a drawing that shows you all the resource space that you have available, and then you're able to design your farm, to decide where has to go and in which place. So let's move on. I hope you're following it up to now, but then in the question time, you'll be able to solve all the doubts. But I mean, if there's important doubts that you have, just stop me. Let's go on a bit. Okay. So what can we achieve if we can find a unit of measure of our system that it's useful for a small system, big system? As you can see, in this system, we divide the space as it were composed of a lot of permanent bed system. Even if the landscape is not cultivated, you have to switch your mindset and try to think how you could occupy that space in your land with a unit of measure that is the permanent bed. Why standardizing the space this way? Because we need a similar system to those or as the monoculture has accustomed us to. So in monoculture, it's very easy to standardize, to use the same equipment for a lot of operations. But of course, this goes not in favor of biodiversity. We can do the same in a biodiverse system if we know how to use a unit of measure, which is our permanent bed system. You can go on and we'll see in details what this means. So let's go on. So to finish all this general introduction of permanent system, you start to do your land from the agroecological point of view. Then you find the right pattern. you divided all your space in a smallest unit of measure, the bed that you can cultivate either with manual or with mechanical tools. And then this gives you a well-layered diversity of production. Okay, let's go on. And once you put all the layers in place, lift it a bit up, you can start with the permanent bed system. You can go on. We can skip this slide. Okay. So this allows you to have repetition, patterns, and rhythm in your production. Because, I mean, I know maybe some of you are familiar with food forest system or synergic gardens. These are very beautiful system to have in your garden for you know, self-sufficiency to produce food for your own household. But when you have to produce in mass production for a market, you have to be able to standardize operation and go faster. So our example, the Zaclos farm, is a farm which is 3 main enterprises. It's market garden vegetables and fruit sold to a CSA. Then they produce garlic, a particular all varieties of garlic for selling to not to the CSA, but for commercial selling. And then there are also a farm that has research education. And as you can see, maybe you can zoom it a bit. They all started with knowing their permanent elements, which are you know, sun, wind, rain. These are the things you can change easily, and you have to be aware of it to design your farm. I mean, you can grow avocado if you're on a very cold climate, or just to make a silly example. But I mean, sometimes we think we can change the weather radically, but it's not possible in a huge land. Then you take into account the less permanent elements and the animals, the plant, and then also the hardscape. The hardscape is the part, the human-built environment, which is also to be taken into account, the roads and the buildings. And then with all these layers, you can design and zone your farm. Zoning is a concept that that is used a lot in permaculture, and permaculture zones are designed so that you put nearby your house the places where you need to take care more often, and then the system that needs less care, they can be put far away from you on, gradually at more and more distance. And this in a scenery that we know that fossil fuels won't be available as it is before, and quite near future is a very sensible thing to do. So use your animal energy the most that you can. Okay, let's go on. And well, we can skip this slide. It's about ikigai, but it's so there's a whole part of this approach that is about holistic management, but we will talk briefly about this. I would like to get more into detail of the technical aspect of, because I think economy will be also dealt in other webinars of this series. But yeah, holistic management is a very powerful tool that I use a lot when I consult for farmers, and it's basically, you know, being really aware of the goals that you have for your production. If you can go to so your resource base is made by the tools that you have, the money that you have, and the people that are really deciding in your farm. And with this whole under management, you can start design your in time and take into your decision in a very sensible way. And you can see you once again, you take into account the ecosystem process, and then there's a lot of testing tools that helps you in in your decisions. But we will skip this part because we have little time to talk about holistic management. But what's important is that more and more we have to think of every line of production within our farm as a separate enterprise that is in system with the others. A common error that we do when we start as farmers is wanting to do a little bit of everything from the start, and this results in a loss of energy, and in the end, it's not that favorable for biodiversity either. So let's start from the beginning from very small enterprises. In the case of Zaclos, as we said before, it's vegetable for the CSA, research and education, and preserving heirloom varieties. And in your case, it could be another example. For example, in the next slide, I think there are some other patterns of guild enterprises. So, for example, the first one is Zacloop, a cash crop, CSA, and garlic. But you can also have a winter CSA with the summer farmers market and garden-fed eggs. And I mean, good quality eggs are an excellent product to sell. Or you can base your livelihood on livestock, like cattle, cows, and orchards, and education. And this is suitable for bigger enterprises with a lot of land. So once again, scale is not a problem. It's just design that makes it all feasible. So just to be aware of the many steps that our product face in their production. We start from mama carrot, seed, transport, we store seed, we start the seed, we care them, then they're ready for production, then you bunch them into a pack, and then you sell them. So we have to be aware of all the energy entailed in all these processes and try to minimize the waste of energy in terms of time, fuel, or anything to make it really not only profitable but also sustainable and from an environmental point of view. Let's go on. And a farmer should plan, I mean, as a routine walkabout of his property, because properties change a lot, and there's a lot of observation that you can do all throughout the years. I used to underestimate this aspect when I used to have a farm too, as a horticultural farm, and then when I started noticing stuff and take into account, for example, just a simple trick that you can use a journal, like writing your own journal day by day, leaving writing on the left side of the journal and leaving the right side blank, and then at the end of a long period you can go back, reread what you've written and take notes about it, and you will notice how the information has seeped into your awareness and you're able to decide. But I mean, really, if you're a farmer, don't stop walking and discovering your farm day by day. Let's go on. And also help yourself with templates or whatever is suitable for you to take notes in a fast way possible, but also to collect all the information rapidly. Let's go on. And remember the permaculture, one of the permaculture principles, catch and store energy whenever you can. So the sunshine is giving us energy in any ways, not only also in terms of water, of gravity, and everything. And all this energy can be used in our favor and replace fossil fuels for most users. So let's go to discover what's a permanent bed system. Is dynamic efficient. Can you shrink a bit the image? Yeah, thank you. And then, so it's based on diversity and repeated patterns of rotation. So you can use, as we said before, both the advantage of standardization and the advantage of diversity. Let's go on and see. Let's see so one bed is the least option, is the basic brick. But then when two beds they meet each other, they start having a really the things start to be interesting. As you can see, the shape of the bed, it's made like a curve. And it's because it's composed of three parts. There's the top of the bed. Maybe in the next slide, just to say, this system is, when you have three beds, it's a triad, which is very important to lump the beds 3 by 3. And then the system is to have 12 beds, so 9 beds of annual species and one triad of permanent species. You see in the image before, you can see it very clearly. So now, sorry, after that, we can see that, as you can see in this row, there are permanent species like the trees that you see on the left side. There are crops available at the moment, and there are reforming beds that you use for the next culture. So instead of replowing or reforming a whole plot of land, a huge surface, you do this rotation on a small scale. And very important, the image that you see, the pathway is a very important part of the bed system. Nowadays, even in market gardening, the tendency is to make a fluffy bed for cultivation, but then to compact too much the pathway, the places where you walk on your feet or with your machinery. In this system, the pathway is the composter system and is the water delivery system. So it's very important to keep it also cultivated with cover crops. And that's really a nice feature of the system that I like a lot. Let's go on and see them in details. And as you can see, the beds are never completely destroyed every year. The part that you redo is reformed by taking dirt from the pathways and then put it on top of the new beds. And this is the basic shape. So the path has a curved shape, and the bed top also is divided in the top and the shoulder. And all these places are suitable for certain type of plants. Let's go on. And you should always use a lot cover crops, which are those crops that allow your soil not to be bare and to keep the fertility as much as you can. But also what I like, maybe it's in the next slide. Can you, sorry. We never think of our crops as cover crops, but in fact they are. If you after you finish your season and you have a bit of radish that you haven't picked because they are too old and too chewy for your customers, you could use them for soil protection. The same could go for lettuce or for beans. And yeah, you can slide along. Okay. I think we are, yeah. And that's really a valuable use of all the life cycle of a crop. We tend to take away this part of our crop production, which is in fact really valuable, especially brassica family. They still mine a lot of nutrients, and they build biopores into your land, which are really valuable for water retention and so on. Let's go on to the next slide. And that's, I mean, we should think of the permabed zone like a biosphere reserve. There's a transition zone, a buffer zone, and a core zone. And the core zone is the soil that we leave undisturbed. The transition zone is all where we cultivate and we move a lot. And the buffer zone is our pathway, which serves as a water conservation structure and a fertility structure. You should think of the pathway as a composting bin, but very shallow and very slow. Let's go on. And I mean, the shape that you see on the slides is just an indication, because you can shape the beds in whatever form you like. And depending on also on your climate. If you're in a very dry climate, it doesn't, you don't need to lift the beds so much. On the contrary, you need to lead water where you're cultivating. While if you're in a very moist environment, it's advisable to go to make higher beds with a higher drainage. But these are only details. The most important feature that you need to have in the system is a nice bed top, a shoulder, a pathway, and the core of undisturbed soil that will preserve your fertility. Let's go on. And as you can see, it's the same that we have on the traditional cycle of the main crop, the cover crop, and the fallow time with no plants on the soil. But instead of using on a broad field scale, we do it on a small scale. And so I don't delve too deeply into how to do the permanent bed cycle, but I mean, it's starting with the cover crop. Then you can see the pathway. Then you start, you mulch your bed with a tarp, and then this diminishes the seed and allows you to seed your crop. Once your crop is finished, you can do another round of cover crop, and then at the end of the cycle, you can bring your manure and amendments and fertilize again. And this allows the system to stay in place. What's the advantage of a permanent bed system? That you can monitor over time what's happening in that particular piece of land, and you can really tweak and adapt and put always the right plant in the right spot every time. So you take the most of it. If you have to start from scratch doing permabeds, let's say we have an old field like a grassland, you can start plowing discs and cultivators, so like for traditional preparation, but then you can use straight away manure like buckwheat. That's really great for taking up phosphorus and potassium. And then another round of rye, clover, all the, you know, in regenerative agriculture, we think the best tool to cultivate the soil is the root of a plant. There's no mechanical tool, not even small scale tools, that have the same ability to prepare the soil. So that's really an asset that we should put in our crop rotation. And then you can put crop compost to give a nice boost of permanent fertility. You can put rot dust, and and then you tarp the bed so that you're free of weeds to start the new cycle. I mean, this is the preparation before you start cultivating, and it's advisable to, if you can, at least 2 or 3 years of this preparation. And this could seem a lot for a farmer, because I mean, leaving 3 years your land unproductive or just some pieces of it. But I mean, it's all time that you spare. It's like when you take a tree from a nursery, which are and then you transplant it, and you think that it's better to start from a transplanted plant than from seeds. But in the end, you see that the tree that starts from seeds will gain and will grow faster, because when you leave nature enough time to prepare the soil, it's much better than shortcuts that we normally have. And especially if you don't get rid of the most aggressive weeds, you will have lots of problems if you start cultivating straight away. Let's go on a bit. And that's some of the benefits of our permanent bed system. We can put in place some windbreaks and so create microclimates that are not possible in open fields of just annual plants. We can have our habitats for beneficial. We use the pathway as a micro manure system, and all the beds are so diverse, so you can streamline the operation along the line, but you also have all the advantage of a polyculture and of plants benefiting themselves together. And the core, leaving the core of the soil undisturbed, will give you cation exchange capacity, or that's to say a stable and reservoir fertility all through your cultivation. So for years and years to come, that's really the capital that you're building for your farm. And I mean, in the end, you'll decide the size of the beds. There's no fixed rule. It depends mainly on the machinery or the tools that you're using. But you should really think carefully about what size do you want. Because that way you can use all the same type of tarps, the same type of irrigation system, the same distance. You can automatize a lot faster your system. So for example, if you're using a walk behind tractor, you can allow a smaller system. If you use a tractor like at the bottom of the picture, you can go with wider beds. There's no problem, and they work all the same. So it's up to your own organization, and that's so you will notice that over time, every season has something to contribute to your system. Even winter with the snow protecting the soil, spring giving new precipitation, summer with all the heat exchange from the sun and the difference between shady sides and sunny sides. And fall, for example, it's very important not only for cropping, especially trees, but also because we get all the nutrients from the leaf fall from the trees, and this will become our organic matter reservoir for the future. So we can go on, and you can see our other type of work that you do. The use of tarps, of plastic tarps or whatever material you think is feasible, and then these are the basic operation that take place in a bed. So they are not really different from normal field operation, apart from the extensive use of cover crops and broadcasts and very short crop cycles. So we can go on. For example, sorry, can you go back a bit? Can you see the importance in winter of having and fall of having your surface covered by any type of plants? Let it be crop or cover crops. Normally what happens in fall, especially in Europe, all the fertility goes down to the river because we plow the fields and we leave it bare, and so all the topsoil goes lost. And I mean, we got used to it when we had a lot of fertility available, and this didn't matter. But now in all over Europe, the fertility is going down and down, and so this is a factor to take into account very, very seriously. Weeds are a very important factor to take into account. So, for example, always use weed-free compost if you can, and then you can use, the stale beds. Simulate that you're going to see something, let the weeds emerge, and then suffocate them. These are common practice in organic farming. And also use micro sprinklers so that you irrigate only the region where you're going to cultivate, and that helps not to spread the weed. You can use very, very flame mowers, or sometimes also burning the weeds. I mean, but it's not about getting furious about the presence of the weed. It's just, the best strategy is to substitute the weeds and their useful ecological function with plants that that they're not going to be as aggressive as weeds. But I mean, to plant your own weeds before the natural weeds arrive. And always think about gills. Not think about the plant as an isolated system, but as you have your crops, herbs crops, but at the same time you can have bushes, trees, and they all contribute to the overall stability of a system. So these ideas are taken from permaculture, a system like forest garden, but they're adapted to the operation of a farm. And let's go on. I think we're almost over with this part. Bed permanence allows us also to adapt to the diversity that we have. We could have an aquatic zone, and next to it we can plant some other type of beds, and then we can reserve some beds for. So, for example, the picture you see on the top is it could be a natural arrangement. What you do in your field is trying to compact at least possible. For example, you transform various types of trees in one row of guilds all over the lines. And so you can have the same biodiversity of a natural system, but in a more compacted place. And that's important. I mean, we have to feed the planet, so we have to make the most of our agricultural land so that we can also leave lands for natural system to evolve. Yeah, you can go on. And for example, if we think about putting trees in the system, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday. We're far behind in our goals to revegetate the earth with permanent system. But the second best time is today, so start doing that. This, for example, is a system with elderberries, with our bushes that you probably know, that can shelter maple trees or some other type of productive trees while they grow, like, mom taking care of the children. And then when the main crop is available, you can either use a biomass of the elderberries to fertilize, or just keeping them together. So it's a very different approach to the one we used. Even there are some initiatives like in Italy, for example, they want to preserve the landscape of the vineyards. But I think it's a great error to transform a field, even a traditional type of crop like vineyards, into a museum. We should get used to landscapes, agricultural landscapes that change over time, because this is what nature does. It never stays in one stage of the evolution, but it constantly cycles from really vegetated to less vegetated stages of its cycle. And design management is really up to the type of crop that we're using, the machinery that we're using. So, for example, for vegetable, we could use a flame mower and then a push seeder, yeah, some other type of crops that need transplanting. They're better managed with black tarp to get rid of the weeds. There's another strategy, I don't know if you know of, which is called roller crimping, which is like a wheel that takes down all the vegetation, all the cover crops that you have without cutting them. Just put them down, but in a way that they're not allowed to lift back. And this is amazing. As the farm, we're using it a lot in vineyards and in other systems. And you have your own tarp, your own mulch growing there. You don't have to put it. You don't have to buy straw or a plastic tarp. So that this is really a promising technology. And I mean, of course, all this presentation will be available to you. So if you miss some details, don't worry. You have to all the time to look at it and get all the details. And you can see how a complex system like this can evolve into the bottom part of the picture, into some kind of fruity landscape with chop and drop nitrogen plants, fruit plants, plants for wood collection. So a very diverse and polycultural landscape, which can give us not only food security but energy security for the future, and food sovereignty and then energy sovereignty, which is even better. Let's go on. And this is for example, another thing that we haven't talked about, but also animals are very easy to implement in the system. For example, if there's some part that you want to leave fallow for the land to recover, a great procedure is to go there with a chicken tractor or some animal system, even pigs or something, if you have it on a farm, and they will do the job for you without no expense from fossil fuel and integrating nutrients and lots of stuff. And you have a great economy on fodder and food for animals. And for example, the typical small animal that you can integrate in this enterprise is mobile layer house that are becoming more and more common. It's a chicken coop that can move along the system, and it's amazing the way that chicken take care of the tilling of the field and really improve your soil and give a good tilt to your fertility. And let's go on. And also this is what's called a sandwich bed, which is a way, instead of leaving the land fallow, you can use do a whole cycle of cover crops and then reform the bed and bury the cover crops several times for a couple of years. If you see that one part of your field is really spent with fertility, you can very easily take back your fertility in a matter of a couple of years and start again with a new production. Yeah, let's go on. And always map your garden so that if you can see, these are permanent bed system, the squares, the rectangular shapes that you see. And typically a permanent bed system is comprised of the beds, some lanes that are used, the long lanes are used for machinery, and they also have some paths in between. But what's interesting about this picture is that you can see how carefully it's been mapped, every feature of the land. The places where you have a deer entrance, gray clay, clay loam, water retention, water stoniness. So we think of our field, we are used to dealing with machinery, and so for most farmers, soil is just a support, and it's an undifferentiated medium for crop growing. But if you start looking carefully at your land, you will notice the subtle differences, and you can always put the right crop in the right place to improve your land with the same crop you're using. And you can help yourself with some templates like this one. When you map your land, you know how many beds are available there. You can really decide your layout in a very detailed way. But always take notes, take into account, and never lose track of your seeding. This is especially for commercial growers and market gardeners. Organization is really the key. There are so many operations, so many facts that you have to take into account, and if you're not organized, you will lose a lot of time. And time, set to say that time is money, even in a CSA. And this could be the layout of a CSA using the system. And again, I showed the system not because I said this is the only way you can farm, but it's the fruit of several years and learning from the success and mistakes about the system. And I like to show it because it's a nice way to put all the information together, and of course it's perfectible. And I mean, I'm not advocating for it. I'm not paid by the author of this book for broadcasting the system. It's just a sensible approach to me to just delve deep into the knowledge of your farm. And I think also it's good to know for people who are not farming, but they want to know what's going on in CSA and what could go on in CSA. So we can go on, and we are almost at the end of this presentation. And I have some other more material that is available, and you can see we need not only to plan for time, for space, but also in time. So if in one bed you have a key crop, the last year there was a crop that you used for as a main crop. The following year you can use a neighbor, a crop that is not that important, and the following year it will be a key crop again. And you can see that in this table you can note all the important aspects and features of the crop that you're growing. One criteria that I can give you if you want to use this method is, of course, plant companionship is very important, but I mean, we have to be practical. And so the umbrella management, so to speak, is the criteria that you put in the similar crops. They have a similar management features, like, all the leaves crops, for example, or the clumping crops, or crops that have a similar seeding practices, the similar watering condition. This matters much more than the association and the plant companionship that you find in books manual. Because at the end of the day, if you lose a lot of time moving irrigation or adjusting to particular type of situation, in the end you won't be productive, and also your work will be less enjoyable. So from the single bed, you can see how can we have intra-bed services. So beds can communicate with each other, but also within a triad, which is a system of 3 beds together. And then you have crop guilds. I mean, the system, you can go on if you want, can go really complex. And you can, from a single bed, from little areas, you can go to very complex, up to the whole farms comprised of these little bricks and little elements that you combine together. and that's the power of this system. A big farm that before it looked to you like a huge system that you can master. Now, if you divide it in small plots and start to think this way, it will become much more manageable. And so you start to recognize patterns in the land, and these patterns, they combine, and more you get to get the big picture of the system. If you can go on. So in the end, sorry, you can get back a little bit. What do we want in the end is a mixed agro woodland. So this would be the landscape of the farms of the future, with lots of perennials. I mean, not you can see the ratio is more or less 9 to 4 to 1, and this is really already a good step ahead towards permanent cultivation. As you can see, the system is would take maybe a little bit to get used to it, but I mean, all you have to carry is in your backpack is information, some little strategies, but it's also, I mean, I've seen it in some system in Italy, similar approaches. And after 1 year or two of getting used to this type of management system, the things go really smoothly, and it pays off to invest a little bit in design and management, and then go on farming, which more you become much more confident in your farming activity than you were before. We are almost at the end of the presentation. Yep. And so that's the transition that I was talking about. Okay. And you can see that we can go to very complex system, but the cycle that we have to go through is coming from one farm, zone one, a very, very small one, to small plots, to triads with perennials, and then you propagate the pattern, you extend it to a community, and then you can go even to regional and bioregional agroecological zone. So it's really a small tab, but this is the transition that we have to go through for agriculture, which is you know, tilling the soil every day and redoing every year all the important job that nature wants to do only once, and then go on in evolution. We are transitioning to agroecology, and we are learning to do it very fast, and we need to learn it very fast, because this is the crucial challenge that we have for the future. And the agricultural landscape of the future will be much more complex, but much more resilient. And that we get to the top title of the presentation, which was Profit and Resilience. All the information, you can find it in this book, which is one of the many books that are published nowadays in about new systems. But I mean, books are only a tool, something that you can give you nice ideas, but in the end, it's your own system, your own practice that would make the difference for you. I can see that we are almost only 15 minutes left from the end of the webinar. I'm sorry for the problems that we had at the beginning, but I'm open to questions and whatever you want to ask me.
Okay, I start reading something maybe, but are we going to have the second presentation, or?
If you want, I I only suppose that we have to stop at about 8:30, or is it? So if you want, we can start with the second presentation, and I can talk about their file and what's going on there. I started with this one because it seemed, you know, more on the point of this webinar that we have to.
Yeah.
But we can show the other presentation. So if nobody has a question, I could go.
No, it's just about PDF sharing and if the book is available in PDF format.
No, I can give you the book on PDF because it's proprietary, but you can find it online very, very easily. So I use it only as an idea, but a very, very interesting tool for me. I mean, what I wanted to show is that it combines all the what's going on market gardening or permaculture orchards and alley cropping, all this new system that, as I said before, they combine good productivity with resilience and ecological principles, and it was, yeah, just to give you a hint of what's going on in this field. But we can show a bit of what we do in their file, and which is very based on the same principle that I said here. And I wanted to show it before that, but yeah. So this, I will go really rapidly, but what we do is the step before cultivation. So in the file, we're really interested in easing the transition from conventional farming to regenerative farming as much as possible. You can go fast. Yeah, I mean, our seminars are very practical, and we really use farm structure instead of academy and classroom. You can go faster on this one. And what I wanted to stress is, well, we address to many type of people, even in developing countries or Europe. It doesn't matter. Farmers have the same problems, and our guidelines are no synthetic inputs, and I mean we avoid the agro industry package as much as we can, but especially regenerating soil. So as you can see, maybe it's better to go faster on this one. I mean, we always think of a farm as a whole, as we said before. The same approach as the presentation I did before, and we think that humus is the core of your fertility. When you increase humus, yeah, as you can see, it has so many properties and so many features that are amazing, and that's the key and the real boost of your system, of your fertility. Okay, the tool that we use are, apart from farm analysis and an economic factor, you can go faster on this one. And I mean, you always have to be clear of what are your financial assets in the beginning. But we use a lot analysis tools that are not as common as, and we want to take the intellectual property away from academia or labs. And that's why we use chromatography, which is a qualitative analysis tool. And we put it in the hands of farmer or of agronomist or whatever wants to use this tool. And this is very simple tools to learn. It takes just one day to get the gist of it. But with it, you can tell if the soil is alive or dead in a matter of seconds, just like in these two images. Then, after we analyze all the data is available, we start feeding the soil with microorganisms with very simple tools like this preparation based on leaf mold and sugar and bran. And this it's amazing how this simple preparation, for example, has at least 20 application for your farm fertility. Another tool that we use is, and this is the material we look for. And we go to the forest, to the wood, because we know that there is a place where the real fertility is and the real soil is. And to have microorganisms formed from this type of system is the best that you can do. Then we go on, put in minerals. We believe that fertility is based on a 3M, so minerals, microorganisms, and organic matter. And so we use volcanic rocks, grind it, and then we put it as a fertilizer, but which is a stable part of fertilizer. And then we do composting or use organic matter, the third M of our system. After that, we take care, after we took care of the soil, we take care of the upper part of the plants with biofertilizers, and we try to defend the plant as much as possible, but the best way to protect the plant is fertilization and to, so to speak, to let the plant eat better and it will be healthier. And this is, for example, lime sulfur solution, which is very easy to make and very cheap compared to the commercial product. And these are biofertilizers, which are really our key tool for giving fertility to the leaves while we wait for the soil to improve. And as we go on, mechanization. This is the way we used to mechanize, and we still do, giving the preference to machines over soil, and that's not possible anymore. And so we investigated a lot in a newer system of conductive machinery. We're not against machinery, we're not against technology, but we want to use it in a smart way. And that's, I mean, this could be a tool that you can use, but it's not the tool, but the way you use it. And we use a strategy called keyline design, which are about to see in the next slides. And at the end of the presentation, as you can see, cover crops and green manures are as important as the system we said before. I mean, the best thing you can put in the soil is a root, and we have plenty of roots to take advantage from. And after we improve the soil with our cover crops, we use a pattern of cultivation which maximizes the use of water resources and minimizes erosion. And this is called keyline designs, which with a basic understanding of topography can be applied to any farm and give a totally different array of possibilities. Just planting plants differently and moving our machinery differently would move the water across the landscape differently. And in a place, especially here in Italy, we are a hilly and mountain country, this strategy is really crucial for the future. And that's the type of system we go to farm, because we want the farm to be, as I said before, transitioning as smoothly as possible from conventional approach to organic and regenerative approach. Then we make the most of the resources of the farm, composting their wastes and closing the cycle of organic matter and nutrients as much as possible. So there are many resources that normally go to waste, and we teach the farmers to use them in a very effective way. And the last tool that we use, this is still some experiences. As you can see, we can have clients ranging from horticulture production to animal farm to cattle farms and to anything. The last tool missing that we're using nowadays is also holistic management, holistic grazing, which is a way of using the animal as they were tillage tool and moving it across our fields in a completely different way, in a concentrated way, but moving faster through time to give the possibility to the pasture land to recover. And this is a key aspect of the future if we want to withstand climate change. This is the way to go, to put a lot of carbon in the root zone of our prairies and to do it as fast as we can, because otherwise we will lose the battle with climate change. And this will mean a lot of disruption of many farms. So I don't want to leave the webinar with a sad note. On the contrary, I think this is a very exciting period to be a farm, and there's a lot to learn. But we have all the tools to improve the situation, to be proficient farmer, and to improve our land as much as the environment around us. So I thank you for your attention, and yeah, I wait. If there are no questions, I will leave all the teaching materials or the recordings available for further study and research.
Any question? Dimitar, right? Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for listening.
I think that you can unmute your microphone if you need. Okay.
Hello. Can
Hello.
you show the chromatography again slide where the tree bark was? The analysis with chromatography.
Yeah, I'm coming. Here we are. Hara?
Yes, and what is this exactly? Could you give 1-2 details? It's, in fact, it appeared to me very nice because very peculiar, because it appears like the eye layers, let's say.
Yeah.
I was with my. Can you hear me now? It's
yeah.
Yeah, it's really what it seems like, an iris of the eye, and it's so to speak a way of watching the soil and exploring. It's basically all the circle that you see is describing the minerals. So if you start from the center, you have you analyze the mineral content of the soil, then you move to the organic matter content, and then on the outskirts, when you see all this, the like flames or formation, this is the enzymatic content, so to speak, the presence of life or microorganisms. If you show the other picture with a comparison, I think the other one with 2 chromatography. So which one would you say it's an alive soil, and which one is a dead soil?
Well, it seems to me that the right on the bottom is more live, but it's just
Yeah.
an impression.
Yeah, but your impression is really right. I mean, when we see an image like that, even without knowing anything about chromatography, we perceive that there's life on one side, because life is about diversity and color, and the other image is the image of dead soil, and that's what it is. The other is a very compacted soil, very lifeless, no oxygen. And so you have a visual tool without knowing anything of chemistry. For example, in Latin America, even people who are not alphabetized, they use the system, and they have a proof that they're working in the right way for them. As your soil improves, the image goes from the one on the top left to the one on the bottom right, and that's amazing. Not to go to the lab and to spend a lot of money in sending samples. And I mean, it's not a system that substitutes we still use a lot quantitative laboratory analysis, but it's good to have your own system that you can use at home and analyze your soil and see how it improves. Because this is a picture of the 3M I was talking before, the minerals, the microorganisms, and the organic matter combining together and living together. That's really amazing, and that's a tool that we use a lot.
Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are any other questions, we can close here. We are going to send all the presentation to Urgency, and they will send to all the participants of this webinar.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you for everyone.
Okay. Tim, do you want to say something? Close. No. Okay, thank you everyone. And thank the AFA. Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Marco.
Thank you.
Okay. So I close. Bye bye.
Bye bye.